The following program does not necessarily represent the views and opinions of Reality Radio 101, its advertisers and sponsors, or its listening audience. Listener discretion is advised. Good afternoon and welcome to the Liquid Green Health Show with your hosts Fred and Janet Cox right here on Reality Radio 101. To get on board, send us an email. Our email address is liquidgreenhealthshow@gmail.com. And now, ladies and gentlemen, right to your hosts of the Liquid Green Health Show, Fred and Janet Cox.
And good afternoon. Yes, it is 5:30. Yes, it is Sunday. And yes, it is the 20th of August. Year is almost done. We're in August.
Quickly approaching.
Yeah.
Don't remind me. Summer, just a month of summer left.
Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone, to all our listeners and viewers across Canada, the United States, and around the world. We are the Coxes, and thank you for allowing us into your private space once again. Every Sunday, once again, and get that right. Once again, every Sunday we have fun on air, offering tips in an edutainment format designed to stimulate the mind and help bring us one step closer to living a healthier lifestyle. What's that music? Okay. Today's show will be rebroadcast on YouTube as well as Spotify, and you could just go in, type in Liquid Green Health Show, and hit the like, share, comment, subscribe buttons, everything, even the bell. Just ring it. Give us that much needed boost. Once again, folks, welcome to the Liquid Green Health Show. What is happening in North America? We have fires burning all over the place. Left, right, and center every day. You wake up, you look on the news, something is happening, and they're blaming it on global warming. Right now in Kelowna, BC, we have Yellowknife evacuations that's going on. The city has declared an emergency. How people are running, left, right, and center to get out of the city.
It's one of the only times when an entire city had to be evacuated. Like everybody.
It's chaos down there. Some 300 kilometers away from Vancouver is Kelowna.
I've been there. You haven't.
No, I haven't.
You missed that trip, Cox.
That one,
yeah.
With a population of just about 150,000 people, and the situation is grim. Premier David Eddy, he told reporters yesterday, that some 35,000 people were under evacuation order, and a further 30,000 were under an evacuation alert. But this morning, I think, according to the fire chiefs, things are beginning to look a little better.
Okay.
Right,
do you know what I think? I think about this because we have been talking about, like last week we talked about addiction. We're following it up with part 2 today, but I'm thinking of the people who know what can happen. They know, they've tried to pack just the essentials from your home. Can you imagine how much stress and anxiety that is? To know that you might never go back to your house, or you're
going to lose everything that you cherished,
right? And
I always
think about that. Not just the things, but even in the situation they had in Hawaii, and the fact that you don't know if your loved ones are still alive or are they dead, or it's just a level of anxiety that's just so awful.
And speaking about anxiety, you're about to experience some Anxiety.
Dopamine rush.
Yeah.
Yes, folks. I am going skydiving.
This crazy partner of mine, folks, she has decided to go skydiving. And thanks to our kids, they've given her this gift.
It's going to be for my 70th birthday. It's my present.
I have made a conscious decision not to get involved. I'll be there with my camera and a ladder just in case.
But what they say about skydiving is this. There are two types of people in the world. They're the ones that
crazies and the non-crazies.
They're the ones that say, like Janet, oh my God, I'm so wanting to do this. And the other side, like Fred, who says, oh my God, are you kidding? Never. Right? And that's basically the reaction. When I tell people about it, some say, oh my goodness, that sounds so great. Probably one day I'll try it. Yeah. And then the other says, why would I want to do something so crazy or so risky?
But you're always dreaming about flying. You have so many dreams that you've experienced flying. So now here you got an opportunity to do the actual thing.
I actually was reading something because just today I started looking. It's actually one of the things, like everybody remembers the polar dip. That's now history. Now it's the skydive. And it's not a check on the bucket list, right? But I'm looking forward to that free fall, because what it says is that free fall, it's not just about falling like boom, straight down like a drop zone at a fun fair, right? It says you can actually manipulate the air. You can do forward, flying backward. You can glide side to side. You can turn right, turn to left. Not that I'll be doing that because I'm jumping tandem. Mm-hmm. And when you jump tandem, there is an experienced instructor that's going to be there. And then you have nothing to worry about but to enjoy the ride.
Just write your will, please, before you go. Okay.
So, Gary, Mike, I know we were talking before. You both had the experience, right?
Yeah, we did.
So, Mike, how was your experience?
It was relaxing with the training, scary in the plane, and very peaceful as I fell to the ground.
Wow.
Okay. That's how I can put it in a few short words. What about yourself, Gary?
Did you?
Yeah, kind of what Mike said, but not the plane. I didn't get nervous there because I'm a pilot, right? So
yeah.
But the training was kind of relaxing, but you had anxiety. And then, I was buckled up, as I say, my first time as tandem. And that was kind of weird, like a cocoon.
Yeah.
The second jump was a little bit less frightening. And then the third jump was, I would say, okay, no issues at all.
Okay.
How did you hit the ground? Were you okay?
First time was pretty soft. Second time was hard.
Yeah.
And the third time was semi-hard.
Okay.
So no need for her to walk with any toilet paper, right?
Yes, I would have the double roll.
But people say skydiving is like getting a tattoo. You can't just do it once. You'll either do it and never do it again, or you'll do it and the rush, the dopamine is like you want to do it over and over again. Which, Frederick, brings us right to the topic of addiction.
So it's before you go there. So it's yourself and Kofi that's doing it.
Kofi is going to jump with me.
Okay.
Oh wow.
That's a gift from the kids, folks.
And Kira, I thought she was going to jump as well. And
she's very much like her dad. Very much like her dad. Don't take the risk.
No, I think she just said not right now. Not right now. I think she wants her kids to grow up a little bit bigger. So I don't know, but I thought she was going to jump.
Smart kid.
Oh dear.
So we have a very interesting topic today. It's a continuation of last week's topic, in which we asked the question, is addiction a disease?
And we came to what conclusion?
Well, we've basically came to the same conclusion as the experts. They say, yes, it is a medical condition that affects the brain and changes a person's behavior. And so we've decided to, because we had so much to talk about last week that we couldn't do it in an hour. And trust me, folks, an hour goes so quickly. We have so much information. We have 3 days worth of information that we have to compile into 1 hour. And, that's what it is today. This is such a detailed topic that we have to really praise it down and make sense of what we did so we can pass the information on to our audience. So Get your friends, tell them that the Coxes are on, and it's a very important subject. You're listening to Liquid Green Health Show on Reality Radio 101. We are the Coxes, and like all other illnesses, addiction gets worse over time. Similar to various stages of cancer. We mentioned this last week. All right. There are levels of severity to describe a substance use disorder. That's what it's called now, substance use disorder, SUDs, ranging from at risk to severe. And, as we mentioned last week, it is based on our research. All the experts have agreed, and I have come to the conclusion that I need to, give into this, because I always say, look, it's not a disease, it's a condition.
Yeah.
Right. And I've always said that. Right?
They can do better.
Yeah.
Snap out of it.
So I snapped out of that, belief.
Yeah.
It is a medical condition that affects the brain and changes a person's behavior. Today, we will continue the discussion on addiction. We will delve into the intricate web of, I'm not sure what that is, into the intricate web of substance addiction, because this kind of addiction is considered a pervasive societal issue. It's an issue that can shatter lives and communities, leaving a trail of devastation in its wake.
Yes.
Right?
If you think about it, if somebody is addicted, and what happens to those people in families? Sometimes they're ostracized. They're no longer welcome
Stigmatized.
to any of the family functions. They're embarrassing. They might cause trouble. So, if they ever come back and get out of that addiction, I'm sure they'll go through the family album and say, how come I'm not there?
Yeah.
Because that's the stigma, right?
Yeah.
It's one of the most stigmatized things that people think, it's his fault, it's her fault.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
there's a lot of self-blame as well.
Yes.
Right. So we're going to get into that. But one of the things I want to bring to the attention of our audience is the government's response, right? How they deal with certain types of this disease, especially you go back to the crack cocaine and the Oxycontin and now fentanyl,
and
right,
even,
which is a crisis.
Yes, and even meth, because there's
Yeah.
been, first of all, it was
wide
marijuana,
range,
right?
yeah.
And then meth and crack and Oxycontin and now
Fentanyl.
Right.
And while all of these substances ravage the lives of individuals and communities, the media, the police, the judicial system, and the government, they have all adopted a disparate treatment towards the disadvantaged and ethnic groups. And to this day, it raises questions and issues about the equity and compassion.
Correct.
In the application.
100% correct.
Yeah.
Because that's what we said in the blurb we sent out, that in the 80s, right, when we had the epidemic, when crack was the big thing. Sure, there was crack and there was heroin. Yeah. Right. And one was just a powdered form while one was in a stone, right?
Form, yeah.
And the way in which it was approached, like the government, who was it, which was the president at the time?
I think it was Nixon, yeah.
At the time, that he declared the whole thing about war on drugs.
That's where the term was coined.
Right.
Yeah, war on drugs.
And then that led to the mass incarcerations.
Yeah, and that was back in 1971 when he made those statements. And
as early as 70.
He referred to it as public enemy number one. Right. But the thing is, in that message, there were other things in the text that the media did not pick up on, because his main priority was to see how you could deal with the overuse of this drug, and what can be done, what kind of resources could be filtered through to help the people. But the media picked up on the phrase war on drugs.
Correct.
Right.
And then what we realized is that there was really a disproportionate in terms of how it affected the communities of color.
Yes.
Now, I don't know if it's real or conspiracy, but they say that the drugs were actually placed in certain Black communities.
Yeah, that's what I heard.
Right?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of research. There's a lot of evidence that that might have been true.
Mhm,
And that was with the CIA, etc.
mhm,
Right?
mhm.
So as to discredit certain communities. But anyway, that's not what we're talking about. But we're really going to look at the difference, because as you were talking about Oxycontin, right? And the crisis in the 2000s. How
Yeah.
was that different?
Well, it's the approach that the government and society as a whole, based on media reports, how they
Mhm.
approach the whole thing, right?
Mhm.
The crisis with the OxyContin, it started in the 2000s,
Yeah.
and they saw there was a more sympathetic response,
Correct. Yeah. I
Right.
think so. Mhm.
with an increased focus on treatment
Mhm.
that was addressing the underlying health issues.
Yeah.
And
So the stigma, like they weren't as ready to they weren't as ready to incarcerate.
no,
Because they figure, okay, this is a problem, and they're recognizing it's a disease, and it was much less painful
Yeah.
for the communities. And we're thinking because it was a difference with race, it became
no,
almost a
but it was
racial.
it was because
racial
at the
situation,
time
right?
it was more prevalent within white communities,
Yes.
right? And
yeah.
as a result, the whole response was
Mhm.
different. Whereas back in the day when crack was
Yeah.
prevalent in the Black community, it was looked upon as
A
a
racial
pariah,
problem. Yeah.
right? And
Mhm.
it was treated totally
And
different.
it was
Incarcerations became, was much
very punitive.
very
That's
punitive,
what it was,
very
right?
punitive in the Black community,
Yeah.
where the same amount of crack,
Mhm.
um,
It was 100 to 1. What
yeah,
they
it was
said
something like
was
100 to 1 in terms of
1
incarceration.
gram
Yeah.
of crack,
Yeah.
and you would get like 5 years in jail.
Yes.
And that's mostly in the Black community.
Yeah.
But 500 grams of heroin,
Mhm.
that's what it would take. So that they said it was 1 to 100.
Yes.
You would have to be caught with 100 grams of, what is it, milligram or
5
whatever,
grams.
of the heroin
Yes.
for it to have the same sentence
Right.
as one.
So
gram.
as a result,
That's why they said it
yeah,
was so
as
unfair.
a result, the incarceration rate among
Black
Black
people.
people,
Some
Black and
people sent to
Hispanics,
jail for those days, you know?
Black and Hispanics was much
Yeah.
more, draconian.
Yeah.
And that's why you have that many Black folks in jail.
And what I wanted to mention here, Frederick, is the fact that it's not just the individual that's affected. It's not just the person who is the addict that's using the drug. It's the entire family.
Yeah.
Right?
It's the
And the devastation
individual,
it has
it's
on
the
the
individual, the family, the community. It's a whole range of things. It's
Right.
almost like a whole village that has been affected.
Right.
And that's why it is so bad.
Yeah.
When you look at how it devastates, individuals and everything else that is aligned with them, right? It's awful. It's a terrible health impact that it has on people that take these drugs.
Yeah.
Now, I want to touch on the illegal drug use, right? Like in many countries, illicit drugs is a problem, right? It's an ongoing problem in Canada and the United States, and it is now becoming worldwide. It's even going into countries in Africa, which never used to happen. Right? Drug use in Africa was basically zero.
Not the kind of drugs that we have now anyway. There were drugs.
Not those kind of synthetic drugs.
Right.
They always had their own natural thing that they use.
Every community has had that.
But
every culture.
Not to the state that it
People
is
are dying
right now.
The epidemic.
Right. And so we have, in particular in North America, countries like the United States and Canada, they are experiencing an opioid crisis, which has seen increases in hospitalizations and death overdose, due to heroin, Oxycontin, and now fentanyl. And there are other types of opioids that is being introduced. And the thing is, it's the impure quality of these things that is being introduced by people who are selling these drugs. Look, we were looking at the documentary today, and the guy was saying they can buy $400, $300, $350 worth of fentanyl from China, get it shipped, pay extra $50 for delivery, right? And that $400,
Can make
he can make $12,000.
It make no what
No,
he said was
$1,200.
no $120 a gram, and
Yeah.
they can make 1,000 grams. So that $400 investment can turn into about over $100,000
$120,000
profit.
in profit.
Right.
So that is why people are selling it.
Yes.
And you
it's a
have
business.
users that want it. And the amazing thing that he said was that
Mhm.
when people hear that someone has died from this
Yes.
drug, they rush to get more.
Yeah, because then they say, "Oh, this is really
Yeah,
good."
well,
This
they're
is
saying
really
to
good."
themselves, "Oh, I'm not going to use as much as that person did. I'm going to use half as much or a quarter as much."
Not
But
knowing
it
they
is
can
such a
control.
deadly thing, that just a whiff of it
Yeah.
can kill you.
Yes.
And it's packed with all other types. It's this
The-
synthetic opioids
Mhm.
and other stuff that's put into it, mixed with heroin, sugar, and all sorts of nonsense. And
Yeah.
people are smoking these things,
Because the heroin was actually legalized at some point, right?
Mhm.
From morphine that was used for pain. The whole conversation actually starts when we start talking about pain and the pain that people go through.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And we're not talking about jumping out of a plane and
No.
breaking your leg.
No,
kind of
look at that
pain.
again in the documentary. You had that gentleman that was hit from behind on
In
his
a
cycle,
cycle,
and he
yeah.
broke just about every bone in his body, even his teeth he lost, right?
Right.
And so he was in severe pain.
So there's a physical pain, but there's also the emotional pain.
Yes. Yeah.
Did you lose a child?
Yeah.
Was there a death in the family?
And they tried to
Was there a
mask it.
divorce? Was there a relationship
Yeah.
breakdown? So there's so many different reasons.
Mhm.
There's always a core issue why people take that first whiff or
Yeah.
that first snort or that first needle. It starts only with one. And that's why we always say, don't try it.
Don't try it.
Because as a person, you have no idea
Yeah.
how you're going to react to it.
Yeah.
And from what we know through the research, we find out that most people, when they buy it, they have no idea what that dose is going to be.
And the seller
That's what
in
you're
the
trying to say.
documentary was saying the same thing.
Yeah.
Like, you get this, when people buy it, he
Mhm.
tell them, they say to him, I'm not going to use all of it. And they eventually go and use all of it. And in many cases end up with an overdose. And the last thing he said to one of the purchasers, he says, "It's your life, buddy."
Mhm.
Right?
And why do the sellers sell? Because
They got to
if
make money. They got to eat.
they're gonna make money, and if they figure like any other business, if you're not buying it from me, you're gonna buy it from somebody else.
They're going to
anyway.
go to the drugstore and they're going to buy Claritin and all the other,
Claritin
sleep
was with
aids.
meth
Yeah,
back in
with
the
all
day, right?
all the other sleep aids, and they're going to overdose on that anyway. Now, as of 2020, 2020, around 25% of Canadians stated that they felt opioid addiction, overdose, and death in Canada was on the rise. 44% believed it to be a serious problem. Almost 18% of Canadians reported that they have used an illegal drug at some point in their lifetime,
Mhm.
with hallucinogens being the most used illegal drug, followed by cocaine or crack and ecstasy. And then, of course, there's cannabis, which is still considered an illicit drug. In the country.
Ganja man.
Ganja, right? A lot of people, they smoke it basically for the same reasons, to ease pain or whatever, some of them for medical
Or
purposes.
just for that feeling of euphoria that you get, for that
Yeah.
dopamine rush, right?
But my take on that, and I said it last week, if you're smoking anything at all, other than air, right?
You smoking air.
If you're not smoking air, you're putting poison into your lungs, right? So regardless of how you feel, folks, if you're not on these, high octane drugs and you're taking cannabis or marijuana, whatever you want to call it, if you're smoking it, you're doing yourself a disservice.
Well, it's on my bucket list as well.
Yeah,
Trying
you can try it.
marijuana. I haven't tried it yet, but it's definitely one of the things. But I won't try it before the jump. Let's put it that way, right? But then we're as people, as society, we're conditioned to think that some are worse than others. For example, weed. I don't think anybody would think weed is as much an issue Certainly the governments don't because they've legalized it, right? Weed is not as big, or alcohol. It is, you can get an addiction
An
to it.
overdose of any one of
But
them.
yes,
Any
you-
one of them.
it depends on the person's mind and their ability to cope with what it
Yeah.
is,
Yes.
you know? So we have the gray drinkers, the one who think, oh, I'll just take a drink now and a glass of wine now. Next thing you know, the bottle is done. And you're still functioning. You're not going to end up being one of
Yeah, but
those
that's one bottle. But if
folks
they
who
do
can't
that,
function.
if
as an
you do
addict.
that on a regular basis, then you'd fall into the category of an alcoholic.
That's
right?
what I'm saying. But is it the degree of the addiction, the degree of what you take that makes it such a problem? Because if you
It is.
everybody I know, all my brothers, sisters, all the friends, they're surprised I have not tried ganja, right? Marijuana. But it doesn't hamper their lives. It doesn't, it's not the same.
Because they're not taking it.
One
No,
try.
they're not taking it to a degree where it could. But I'm saying it doesn't matter what degree it is. If you're putting anything into your lung other than air, you're doing some kind of damage.
Sure, I'm not saying
Some kind of
that's not
damage.
true. I'm not saying that's not true. But I'm saying is the effect it has on the person is different. If you
It may take longer.
fentanyl,
Yeah.
if you tried like it's
4 grains,
equivalent
4 grains
to
of
4 grains of salt.
yes.
That's the
You're dead.
equivalent. That can kill you.
You're dead.
Right?
There's no question about it. You are dead. And you don't even
So it's not in the same boat.
no, it's not in the same category. It's not as toxic as
Trying
marijuana is
weed
not
or
as toxic
having
as
a
those
drink.
drugs, right? But I'm saying marijuana could be just as toxic depending on the severity in which and how you take it. If you're doing it, if you're smoking it on a regular basis, I'm not talking about eating it or drinking it or whatever, right? I am saying, even if it's for medicinal purposes and you're smoking it, the fact that you're putting a foreign substance into your lungs at some point in time, it is going to affect you.
Yes, that's the same as all the toxins we talk about all the time.
Yeah.
The toxins in their cleaners.
Yeah.
Right. It's the same effect.
Same effect.
But anyway.
Right. Now,
You never agree.
there's also a cultural and political difference between crack and cocaine, right?
You mean between cocaine and the opioids?
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, and the opioids, yeah.
Right. Mhm.
One, which is crack, is a derivative of powdered cocaine.
Right.
I don't know what to do with it to turn it into the state that it is.
Crush it.
Right. Crack cocaine is more affordable
Definitely cheaper.
and accessible
Mhm.
rather than powdered cocaine.
So it's the poor people choice of drugs.
It's the poor
right?
people's choice of drugs, right? The term crack cocaine is loaded with connotations of stigma and discriminations.
Crackhead.
Again,
You're a
yes, they
crackhead.
call you a crackhead. They don't call you a cocaine head or a meth head, right? You're a crackhead. So it has that negative connotation to it. And again, because of where it was first, where it was used, right, and distributed en masse, right? You have the media, right? That negative stigma was really driven by the media in the US, right? And it depicts people in urban societies, right? It created a kind of a health crisis, primarily affecting Black communities in American cities. And so because of that, the way the media portrayed it, it left an image of negativity in the minds of the general public. And people started looking at that as, something. So that's a big stigma.
Right.
So, and instead of addressing the use of crack along with socioeconomic conditions, they address it from a racial standpoint, and that's a big problem.
It wasn't until I think it was 1986. Remember that basketball star, the Black player?
Yeah.
His name was Len Bias.
Len Bias.
And he had just been given a contract. I forget which team it was he was going to join. And just shortly after that, he died of a crack overdose.
Oh, that's what
and
they said.
That became that's when the public
It became a symbol now.
Outcry,
Yeah, it
right?
became
The public
he became a
outcry.
symbol
Mhm.
now of the dangers of crack cocaine, and the media again they jumped in it and they said, well, this is what happens when you do that.
Mhm.
As a matter of
But the
fact, I
good
think
thing
a law
about
was passed.
Yeah, the good thing
Yeah.
about it was that law that came about, the Anti-Drug Abuse Act in 86.
Okay. Now, you know what?
Mhm.
Before we get into what led to the opioid crisis, I think
Okay.
we should break for commercial,
Okay,
and then
sounds
we're
good.
going to come back. So let
Mhm.
me tell the folks that they're listening to the Liquid Green Health Show. We are the Coxes, and you're listening to us on Reality Radio 101. We'll be right back after this.
Join the eco revolution with the Liquid Green Products Reseller Program. Are you passionate about sustainability? Ready to make an impact while earning extra cash? Then look no further. Get on board with Liquid Green Products and become a part of our reseller program. Why us? We're not just another eco-friendly company. We are a movement for a greener future. Join our reseller program and be an advocate for sustainable living and enjoy the benefits of a profitable business venture. What makes us special? Our eco-friendly products are top-notch, made with plant-based ingredients. They're safe for your customers and the planet. From household to industrial use, we've got the perfect eco solution for everyone. As a Liquid Green Products reseller, you'll make great profits and gain access to our marketing goodies, including product catalogs, promotions, and digital assets. We'll train you on our products so you can impress customers with the benefits. We're all about strong partnerships, so we're here to support your success. Together, we'll create a sustainable future, reduce footprints, and inspire eco-conscious choices that make a difference. To learn more and to sign up for this amazing income potential, please visit our website at www.liquidgreenproducts.com/reseller or call us at 416-460-5645. That's 416-460-5645. Start making a difference and start earning a profit today with the Liquid Green Products Reseller Program, saving the planet with one clean at a time. Welcome back to the Liquid Green Health Show with your hosts Fred and Janet Cox, right here on Reality Radio 101. Contact us live right now. Our email address is liquidgreenhealthshow@gmail.com. And now, ladies and gentlemen, right back to your hosts of the Liquid Green Health Show, Fred and Janet Cox.
Okay, we're back, and our conversation today is all about addiction and the opioid crisis and all those crazy types of drugs that's on the market. We are the Coxes, and this is the Liquid Green Health Show, and welcome back to our show. If you're joining us for the very first time, this is the Liquid Green Health Show. Now, we were going to talk about what led to the opioid crisis. And according to, I think it was in February 2022 report from Stanford Lancet Commission on the North American opioid crisis, they're saying that this is a major crisis, right?
As a matter of fact, sorry to interrupt, what they're saying is that the COVID issue that we had, the pandemic,
Yes,
addiction is like it's going to be, it's before, it's during COVID, which actually made it worse, and it will continue, and that it's going to be, it's much of a bigger problem than COVID or SARS ever was.
Yeah.
And yet the government came in and they created the what you call it,
The vaccine.
the vaccine. They did all sorts of things. They put millions and millions and millions of dollars into it. And yet they're not doing that in the same kind of urgency with addiction, which is a much bigger problem.
And there's a reason for it, there's a big reason for it. Money talks. Lobbyists, they do what they have to do to avoid certain restrictions.
Yeah.
The pandemic has really masked and
yes,
both mask and amplify the crisis of this drug thing. But there's a warning, and the warning is that unless there's urgent intervention, they're predicting that 1.2 million people in the US and Canada will die from opioid overdoses by the end of the decade. That is in addition to the 600,000 or more people that have died since 1999. So 1.2 million plus the 600,000 people that have died. That is the prediction that we're facing, right? That's the dilemma rather that we're facing. So yes, it is a major, major crisis. The current opioid crisis ranks as one of the most devastating public health catastrophes of our time. And it started, as we said earlier, back in the 90s, when the powerful agent of Oxycontin, you saw the movie, was it Painkillers?
Recently,
right?
yeah.
Which was promoted by Purdue Pharma and approved by the Food and Drug Administration, triggered the first wave of deaths linked to the use of illegal prescription opioids. That is because Purdue lied about the effects of it. This is just about 1%, which was a huge lie.
The effect of the ones who would become addicted.
Yeah.
Right.
Huge
So
lie.
it does help if you have pain, but what they don't tell you is that
you can be addicted to it.
Yeah, it's death by medication.
Yeah.
Right, which is a big problem.
Yeah.
Because I forget the percentage, but they say a huge percentage of people die because of medication and the effects, the side effects. But I like to talk about the human side. Somebody, when you see one of those ads on TV about any of the new drugs they're trying to sell.
Oh, it's a good ad.
The ads are great.
Very good ad.
But what follows the ads?
All the side effects.
The side effects, and
including
they tell you,
death.
Including death.
Including death.
What happens? We still take them, doctors still prescribe them, and they're still given out as if no big deal.
Because when you go as a patient, you go and you sit in front of a person that's wearing a white coat.
And you believe them,
it's a representation of purity, and that person speaks nice and calmly to you, use a lot of psychology in you, and you fall for the trap.
But guess what? It's the exact same. Translate that into the heroin or the fentanyl addict. You know exactly what it's going to do. We just said that some of them here, that it's going to be, it could kill you.
Yeah, but
they still decide to take it
because when you sit in front of these professionals, there's a period where it's almost like suspension of disbelief, right? You're sitting there.
So many people just believe what their doctor says without any question.
No questions asked.
But the analogy I'm trying to draw is that just in the same way that we hear the ads or the doctors know what the side effects can be, but for lack of some of the other
doctors really know?
They know because they've been.
They all know?
Probably
or
they don't
just go
all
by
know,
what they're told.
But they've been paid to do it. They have. They've been told it works. Probably it works in some instances. But of course they know that there are other options. Of course they know about the addictions, etc.
Yeah,
right?
they do, but it
my
comes down.
Point wasn't about that. I'm not trying to diss doctors, right? My point was that even though somebody knows that something is bad for them, when you're an addict,
you're in pain. Yes, you need relief.
Pain,
you need relief.
And you want from whatever that core issue that you have, you're going to do what you think is going to help you.
Yes,
and that's how we get there.
And that's how you get it. Another reason for the crisis is that the post approval of these drugs is usually left up to the industry.
Yes.
Not the regulators.
Right. So they're regulating themselves.
Yeah, it's a self-regulating industry. And so that is a big problem. And then you have donations from opioid manufacturers to politicians who continue to influence the policy of decisions. So money talks,
Yes.
lobbying talks. And then you have politicians who are members of the FDA who are working to regulate these drugs. When they leave that position,
Yes.
who they go and work for?
The companies.
The same company that, you know,
Mhm,
that they were trying to regulate against. So it's a revolving door that money is what spin things around. All right. And that's the problem. So the crisis, it demands a lot of urgent what's the word I'm looking for?
It's response. The
Yeah.
response has to be big and it has to be bold.
And
It
comprehensive.
has to be unified. It
Yes.
has to be all levels of government. It has to be the police, the healthcare system,
Well,
the families involved. It has to be everybody. The
Who-
teachers,
Yeah,
everyone.
who's going to be the one to build the cap? Who's going to be the one to do? Which politician has the the
It's not about
balls?
one person though. It's a system.
That's
It's
the
a systemic
problem.
problem.
It's a system that's
Right?
that's masked, and with the dollars coming, the big dollars coming in. I mean, how are we
And
gonna stop-
and yet, take the guy now who is had a good job,
Mhm.
had a family, and now he's addicted. He's on fentanyl.
Yes.
Do you know what? They don't care about anything else in their lives except that next dose. And we've listened to some of those people. They said they will shoplift. They
Oh,
will,
yes.
they've prostituted themselves,
Yes.
right?
It's really gone. That's when
They-
they're
they
really
have-
gone.
Tried to sell the dope themselves just to make money,
Mhm.
right? And they will do anything necessary. They'll sell their grandmother to the drug dealer
But
to
what?
get the money for that next fix.
But that brings me to the next point here.
Mhm.
In North America and parts of Europe, I think Holland and Sweden and other parts of Europe, they have stations where these addicts can go and get medication, controlled doses.
They have them
Are they
here
really? They have it here in
America.
Vancouver,
Yes.
right? And I think they
and
have
in
it
the
in
States,
in the States, and I think
probably has an
I think they
area.
have it in Toronto as well.
Yes,
But
yes.
is it really addressing the problem? Is it really helping
Yes.
them to curb their addiction?
Okay, the way I understand it is yes,
Mhm.
because they have done it and then they do the pilot studies.
Yeah.
They look at the addicts the ones who have been over the rate of overdose,
Mhm.
the rate of deaths,
Mhm.
and they compare the ones who are on the street using the dirty needles,
Yeah.
taking the dirty water from the sewers,
Right.
wherever, or dirty puddles,
Yeah.
injecting it into their bodies. When they compare those people to the ones that actually get the pharmaceutical grade fentanyl or whatever it is that they get,
Mhm.
when they use that under controlled situations, it actually helps.
But is it helping? Like, okay,
It helps them because they need the fix.
yes.
But instead of getting the fix on the street, they
Mhm.
get it under supervision, and that cuts down on addiction.
But is that
It doesn't cut down on addiction, it cuts down on the overdose.
yeah? But that is addressing the symptom. That's not addressing
That's right.
the root cause of it.
And that's how I'd
Right.
like us to end the show today when we get to that point, which is
Yeah.
coming up so quickly.
Mhm.
We want to address the fact that what they're doing right now is not really working, because somebody can be in remission. It's
Mhm.
like cancer.
Yeah.
You can be in remission for 2 years.
Yeah.
And then you go to a party
And you see
and
something.
there's a packet
Yeah.
on the table
Yep.
and you try it and it's
Temptation.
gone,
Temptation.
as
Yours-
if all
yeah.
of that never happened.
Yep.
Right?
That's
Mhm.
exactly what
Because what happens is that they say when you're overdosing,
Mhm.
they don't even know they're overdosing unless there's a friend. That's why, coming back to what you were saying, the supervision sites are so important, because there is somebody there to help.
Now let's talk about
Mhm.
convictions,
Okay.
right? This has been a problem in certain communities, various communities. There's enough evidence to prove that some communities have been overly convicted
Mhm.
than others,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
About 41% of offenders, are Black, while 39% are Hispanic. This is in the United States, right? White people accounted for a much smaller proportion of fentanyl convictions, at about 19%. The current opioid epidemic, it's being described as a public health crisis.
Yes.
When a white face is involved, all right? When a white face is involved with this opioid pandemic, it's a different approach compared to, again, I go back to the crack epidemic that hit the Black communities back in the 90s. And it was met with an outcry of war, right? That phrase, war against drugs. And it has such a devastating effect on communities rather than a compassionate approach for the offenders.
Yeah.
Right.
But you know what, too? It's not just about the black and white face anymore. It's also a matter of the rich and the poor.
Yeah, because the drug doesn't recognize culture, race, creed,
but
religion,
fentanyl
nothing.
Is expensive, much more expensive than, say, crack was, right? And therefore, you need to have the money, first of all, to get into the addiction. Do you realize that a child can be, when a teenager can be in their house with parents there, and they can order fentanyl and have it delivered?
You're kidding.
Yes, that is how bad it is. Social media has helped.
Yeah.
As we know, you can order from China.
You can order, yeah.
At school, and it's a lot of kids who have the money to afford it. They're the ones, and it's therefore now no family, not rich, not poor, not racially, not religious. Anyone can be affected by this right now.
Now, staying in the same vein, we talked about conviction, incarceration.
Yeah.
And overwhelming, a lot of people went to jail for these, for using these drugs, but more overwhelmingly, the increase in incarceration was attributed to the drug war, has disproportionately impacted Black communities. In 2011, Blacks were incarcerated in a dramatically higher rate than whites, about 5 to 7, right, higher, and accounted for almost half of all the prisoners incarcerated in the sentence. Sentencing was much harsher, right, when it comes to Blacks and Hispanics.
Yeah, but for most crimes, for drugs and other crimes.
Both in Canada and the United States, right? And that is something that, people have been complaining about.
And I think it's beginning.
Hopefully, I don't know the statistics right now, but from what I've come to understand, it has affected these, racial communities much more than it has affected other things.
Yes. Well, Frederick, you know what? We have not read any emails whatsoever.
Okay, you want to take a look at that?
Let's take a look.
And then we're going to talk about education, and we're going to talk about how to solve some of those issues. Right. There are some good news.
Yes.
Right.
Okay. So that's where we'll come back to.
Right.
Okay. We'll start with one of our first emails was from Tammy on addiction. And she says, addiction, no matter what, is always an issue. Thanks for the topic today. And Tammy, thank you again for tuning in almost every week. We love your emails.
Right. And there's one from Kelly. Kelly says, hello to the Cox family. Love Liquid Green. Thanks for that image. That's a lovely image. Looks very liquefied.
Yeah, thanks for reminding us that we are the Liquid Green Health Show and that we do this.
Yeah.
Not just about addiction, but for everything health, right? Everything health.
And Tim says that we'll be listening today, and thanks for tuning in, Tim. Here's one from who's this?
Who's that, Mike?
Yeah, that's Mike. Hello, Coxes. What do I do about an addiction to your show? Just keep listening. That's all I can say. Keep listening.
That's an addiction you don't need
That's
a
a
cure
good
for,
addiction.
right?
You don't need a cure for it. Just make sure you're here every Sunday at 5:30 p.m.
I try to encourage others to become addicts. All right. This is one thing where we want you to become seriously addicted.
Here's another mic. Another mic is written and it says, hello, Coxes. No joke here. Are Liquid Green products flammable? Thanks.
Oh, okay.
There's no caustic, no flashpoints, no.
What we'll do, we'll answer that we'll write to him and let him know.
Yes.
That no, there is no flammable.
But I can tell you right up, there's no flashpoints. Yeah. No, you don't have to worry about that. Here's one from Katie. No matter what the addiction, get help. Don't let it get you. right? And that is so true. Get help. But you know what?
Mhm.
A lot of these people that are on these these synthetic substances, they're looking for help,
Yes.
right? And as we
It's
said,
the pain.
the problem
What's
is
the problem?
the pain is so severe, whether it's physical or emotional, is so severe that the only help they can get right now is a fix.
Yes.
So they're not addressing the root
Of the
cause.
problem. What started it in the first place?
Right.
The
And we're going to
grief,
get to
the
that.
loss,
And
whatever.
we have to
Yeah.
address that. We have
Okay.
a few minutes left. There's one from Anne, and Anne says, Fred, you better be careful. Janet may have an addiction with skydiving in the very near future.
And follow up to that, Ray says, that's true, huh? As long as you can afford to keep sending me, right? Ray says, Janet, are you serious? WTF? Question mark, question mark, question mark. Do you have insurance?
I asked the same question if her will has been put together, right? Here's one from Frank. Yeah, go ahead. What you were going to say?
Go ahead, go ahead.
Frank says, hello to the Coxes. Thank you for helping all of us with our addiction. We really, how do you read that? We really all do have something going on.
And we do.
Yeah.
But the thing is, most people will not become addicts. Although Anne says, hi to Janet and Fred, drugs are bad, but so are bacon cheeseburgers, which are my addiction. And guess what? That's what we talked about, addiction to food, because the stuff they put in it causes you to become addicted.
Yeah.
But that's not the topic today, but Anne, you're so right.
I'm going to read one from Beth here, and Beth says, Fred is right about weed.
It is.
It is on all of the government websites. Weed, the THC in it, long-term does in fact destroy brain cells. Right, the hippocampus, and can also cause lung cancer. Millions of people that smoke grass every day have had lung cancer, and they never smoke regular cigarettes. Weed can be bad like so many other substances.
And we're not disagreeing. We're not disagreeing that is bad, but in the range, I would rather my kids smoke weed than take fentanyl.
Yeah,
that's what
if I had a choice, yes.
If that was the situation.
Yeah, that's it.
Right.
And Don is saying the politicians F everything up for us. Screw them.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, I'll send this to my
local politician.
Okay. And Pam says, I'm addicted to this. And there's an image. Oh, and it's a liquid. She's addicted to TV.
Okay. I'm addicted to Netflix. Yes, okay. So many.
So many. So let's go back to what we were talking about. We have, boy, an hour really goes quickly, huh? We were talking about incarceration here, and the rate of incarceration between blacks and whites and Hispanics is so
the good news. We're going to talk about the good news. Is there hope for these addicts?
Well, first of all, education, right? We need to talk about education. That is part of the good news, because addiction training, it should be an essential part of all health professional education. And I think they're beginning to come around. They're beginning to understand that, look,
I think,
it must not be a segregated thing. It must be included. All health practitioners need to understand that this is something that needs to be taken care of.
And I do believe that in most cities, in most jurisdictions, that the criminal justice system, they have to understand that incarceration is not the treatment.
Yeah.
And even in Toronto, I know that they're looking at plans that if the cops are called to a mental health crisis situation, where it may be somebody who's bonkers or on drugs or whatever, that the response cannot be the same as if you're committing a crime.
Right. And I think the training within the Metropolitan Toronto Police Services have really changed. Because remember, police are trained to arrest, right? And lay charges, not to deal with drug situation, overdose. We have severe problems.
People who are not most of, but so many of the people who are being arrested for these crimes are the ones on drugs, because they need to do something. They don't have a job anymore. So they need to commit the crime in order to get the money to buy the drugs.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's a whole nother story here. Right. The public health community, I think that they should also work with the criminal justice system to move more affected people away from incarceration and like what you're talking about and towards treatment, which is very, very important, right? So that is something that I'm certain that they're working on it. They have done a lot of, they've made a lot of good strides along the way. Now, the good news here is that health professionals are now beginning to stay away from things like substance abuse, those terms, and they're using things like SUDs, right, which is substance use disorder. That's a new phrase they're coming into. And instead of talking about getting clean, right, or the dirty people, right, they're using different terms like recovery and relapse, right, which is a good sign. Yeah. Right. The language is changing.
And I think they're also recognizing that there's something called the Stockholm syndrome. And what that says is the more the person is devastated, the worse off you are, is the more you will seek it out because you have no choice. And so when they bring up these, when they, in the treatment, they're going to have to recognize that is something that has to happen.
But that, okay, right? Now the treatment, remember I touched on it earlier when I talked about the length of time that it takes for somebody really to recover.
To get clean.
I don't think, like they're saying, okay, some people are saying, 1 year, 2 year, but it's much longer than that. Because you can go into a relapse after 10 years.
It's a change.
Which means that they have not been cured of that condition.
Exactly. And that's why you need the counselors. I know I'm going to bring my friend Dr. Barbara Stewart on soon, because after this topic is going to be great.
Yeah.
Because people like her who are counselors, they talk about the grief, the loss. They get into the situation. What was the inherent cost in the first place?
Treatment, in my opinion, has to be holistic. But you have to include the spiritual aspect. Yes. If you're gonna really heal somebody from this condition, you have to take into consideration the spiritual approach to it, which I always say the mind has to be reconditioned.
Of course. And guess what? I'm gonna agree with you. And actually, I'm agreeing with you, but it's bigger than that.
Yes.
This is one of the things I learned during the research, and I love it. It's called Nourish. Okay. Nourish. Nourish. N being, you have to get out in nature.
Okay. Yeah.
Calm body of water, go into the forest, the trees, whatever. What it does, it causes the release of the dopamine. These are the things that you can get without being on drugs.
Right.
It helps to reset those transmitters because there are 3 transmitters, and I'm going to go through this very quickly. GABA, which is the transmitter for anti-anxiety.
Okay.
It's the neurotransmitter that affects how anxious you are. And then if that is low, that is what's going to cause you to start worrying about everything. Right? And will cause you to have to develop so much anxieties in life, which are some of the things that go back to the pain, right?
Okay.
Then there's serotonin, and which is responsible, the neurotransmitter responsible, that's the antidepressant. So when your serotonin level is low, that's when you're going to crave the alcohol. You're going to crave the drugs. You're going to be unhappy. You're going to be depressed, and you're going to need the dopamine.
Yeah.
Because dopamine is the one that helps you to focus on your motivation, right? So when we come back to the N, into nourish, these are the things that will help you. The O is to breathe. Observe your breathing.
Yeah.
Take a deep breath, right?
Yeah.
And we're just going to rush through the rest of them because we have less than 3 minutes. The U is to unite with others. That's where the social, not just social media, but the real social interaction
with other humans.
The physical, the touching, the babies getting hugged, those things. The R is to replenish with food. And we have done a lot on this show about the gut microbiome and eating healthy. It's so holistic, right? The I is to initiate movement. That was one of the first shows we did, was an exercise, moving. The S is what you talk about, is the meditation.
Be still and know that I am.
And know that
Know
I
that
am
I am.
God,
Yep.
right? Or I am. And lastly, the H is to harness your creativity. So get out there and do some of the things
Yeah.
that will make you feel
The
good.
spiritual aspect, very important.
So many of the things that end with ing, like skydiving, like your gardening, like your painting, your fishing, but not the ings that end with drinking and smoking. And there's another one I haven't mentioned.
Right.
Or of
No,
course, overeating.
I just want to
right?
say, folks, we're
Run
right
out of
into
time.
the final moment. There are approximately 25 to 30 million people who are in recovery in Canada, United States, and a lot more worldwide.
But the problem is still growing.
It's still
though.
growing. People in recovery are heroes. You got to remember that. They have been able to rebuild relationships with people who they care for and who care for them. They've contributed once again to their communities and societies
Getting back
and
into their
regain a
lives.
sense of purpose and meaning to their lives. It's a long journey, but it's not a hopeless situation. So folks, for those people out there who are seeking help, let's help them to recover, because this is really a crisis. And with
Just before you go with that, there's a drug that we did not mention, Narcan.
Mhm.
And that is one of the things that when they go to these centers, they actually give them Narcan because that
for
will
quick
help.
recovery, it's a block.
It
It's a
will-
wall that stops the
Yes.
fentanyl from going forward.
It saves
It's a
lives.
blocker.
It
Yeah,
saves
that
lives.
saves life. And with that, folks, we would have to say we're out of time. As I
usual.
always say, we have 3 days worth of information to pack into 1 hour. So with that, I'm going to end the show by saying good health is central to human happiness and well-being, contributes significantly to prosperity and wealth and even economic progress. As healthy individuals, we can be more productive and may even live a little longer. So until next Sunday, same time, same place, same station, this is Janet and Fred Cox saying, let's stay healthy on Reality Radio 101.
Thank you for listening to the Liquid Green Health Show with your hosts, Fred and Janet Cox, right here on Reality Radio 101.